April 16th, 2020. A manhunt would begin for a convicted sex offender, Thomas Deering, and kidnapper, James Newman, after escaping from the maximum security facility, Columbia Correctional Institution. Columbia is one of the most secure facilities in Wisconsin. How did they do it? Did they get caught? These are questions that we will answer. Let's get into it. At 5 a.m., the pair would make their escape. Incredibly, they would exit their housing unit to report for work at the bakery and climb a nearby double fence. The fence was topped with extremely sharp razor wire. To mitigate this, the pair strung clothing and other items across the top and climbed over without being seen. They were now out of the facility and had their freedom. This wasn't the first time each of them had escaped, and you would think that prison staff would have known that the pair were escape risks. Deering was convicted in Milwaukee County in 2001 of various sex crimes and received a lengthy prison sentence. He was sent to the maximum security facility, Waupun Correctional Institution. Just 2 years after his conviction on October 4th, 2002, he would escape from Waupun and make his way to California, where he would be captured 2 months later on December 1st, 2002. After a month-long extradition process, he was back in Wisconsin DOC, and it seems ready to plan his next escape. In 2016, while in prison, he would earn a battery charge, extending his release date even further. Newman was convicted in 2009 of firearms-related charges, and while at a supervised living facility, he would walk away from custody on July 17, 2012. He wouldn't make it too long and was captured in Florida on July 25, 2012. He wouldn't be returned to Wisconsin DOC until October 30, 2013, likely due to local charges there. While on the run, Newman committed a string of crimes, including kidnapping and theft, earning him an additional 25 years in prison. These two weren't a pair of petty thieves. They were serving lengthy prison sentences when they escaped from Columbia and were a danger to the public. After getting over the fence at the prison, they would head for a local motel where they would change clothes and call a taxi. They would then take the taxi to Poignette, Wisconsin, about 20 miles to the south of the prison. From there, they would be picked up by an accomplice, who we will talk about later, at the local Piggly Wiggly. They headed south to get as much distance from the prison as possible. From there, we don't have too much information, but the next morning, Deering and Newman would show up at a homeless shelter, Miss Carly's, in Rockford, Illinois. The nonprofit posted on their Facebook page, "This morning 2 men showed up at our door, shivering, frozen, wearing prison-issue sweats and thermal shirts. They had emergency blankets stuffed under their clothing. They looked just like the kind of people who we want to help, but they weren't." Newman and Deering would be taken into custody by the Rockford Police Department on April 17, 2020, just 1 day after their escape. They were off the streets and the public was safe from them. Deering would return to Wisconsin DOC that same day after a hearing where he would waive extradition, likely knowing fighting was a lost cause. Newman, on the other hand, would fight extradition and not be returned to Wisconsin DOC custody until June 5, 2020. Now that the pair were back in prison where they belong, an investigation into the incident would take place. Usually, inmates are aided in their escape, and this one was no different. 2 women would be charged as accomplices in their escape. Holly Zimdahl, a kitchen worker at the prison, was smuggling in items to aid the inmates. Zimdahl claimed that she was coerced into helping, as they were threatening to harm her and her daughter, who was a correction officer at the facility. Investigators found $1,400 in her car when it was searched, leading them to believe she was being compensated for her help. They also found a handwritten note that said, "Insulated carbide-tipped electric fence cutters that can cut through 1/8 inch galvanized steel fencing. They have them at Grainger.com for $50, or you can get them at Home Depot, Lowe's, or Farm and Fleet." Zimdahl would plead guilty to escape as a party to the crime and receive 3 years of probation. The other woman allegedly involved was Catherine Woodrick, whose boyfriend is an inmate at Columbia. She was the alleged driver that picked up the pair at the Piggly Wiggly after being dropped off by the taxi. It was unclear where she allegedly took the pair after picking them up. In an unlikely twist, Woodrick would take the case all the way to trial and be found not guilty on all counts. The state of Wisconsin would complete an investigation as to what happened during the escape. A major factor in the escape was that 4 out of the 5 towers at the facility were unmanned at the time. DOC noted that staffing in towers had been reduced since 2015 due to budget cuts. Apparently, at each correctional institution across Wisconsin, they are not being manned 24/7. Wisconsin DOC claimed that the 1 tower manned at the time of the escape did have a view of the fence line. A spokesman for DOC said, "DOC does not feel staffing/lack of staffing of towers played a role in the escape. About a month after the escape, the warden and several other employees were put on paid leave. By July 2020, 7 staff members, including the warden, had either resigned or were fired as a result of their actions on the day of the escape. In total, 13 staff had their involvement investigated. DOC Secretary Kevin Carr said of the firings, "These are tough decisions that bring pleasure to no one in our agency, but I cannot tolerate job performance that compromises public safety. We take that responsibility very seriously." In the end, Deering was convicted of escape and sentenced to an additional 3 years in state prison. Not that that will make any difference, as he was already serving a lengthy sentence. At his sentencing, he said, "Escape might seem like an extreme measure to most, but sometimes it takes extreme measures to revitalize what is within us. There is nothing more invigorating than to embark on an adventure that puts it all on the line." Deering also bragged about being the only offender to escape from 2 maximum security facilities in the state of Wisconsin. I have to admit, that is quite a feat. Wisconsin DOC shows a mandatory release date of May 25, 2070 for Deering. He is currently incarcerated at Wisconsin Secure Program Facility, possibly the most restrictive in the state. We have previously profiled that prison. Click the link above to check that out. Unless he escapes again, he will never see the outside of prison. Newman is in a similar situation. Although the current escape case is still pending, Newman is currently incarcerated at Waupun Correctional Institution, with a mandatory release date of December 9th, 2047, although it is likely that if convicted, the escape will add a few years to his release date. This was another Chasing Crime profile. Thanks for watching. See you next time.